So we move on to the next one, which was the buffer, and you can see that this one's got a hell of a lot more room in it. It's better. It's better. It's a hell of a lot neater. There's no pot, so there's a lot of space saved with not having a pot there. And that's actually just a little board that I designed, that I designed in dip trace that I etched myself. So having that 3mm down there, it just makes logical sense because nothing else is going to fit down the sides of this 3-pole double throw, and I quickly worked that out, and that's why I put that down the side there. And this layout, this wiring layout, I guess you could say, will fit this DC jack up the top here very easily as well. You'll see what I mean later on by will fit this DC jack, because later on that DC jack will cause you misery, and it's done that for me a few times now, but we'll get into that a bit later. So yeah, that's much better, better looking internal as far as that goes, but it's also a smaller board and it doesn't have the 16mm pot. So this is a 7-minute fuzz board. It's a little etch board that I did. Again, I'm using these stupid compact 3-pole double throws with the PCB mount lugs on it, and I'm also using the open style jacks, but again they fit okay. It's not a problem like it was with the first one. I've got a 16mm pot under there for the volume, and then the PCB, probably should have actually hot glued that down, just sits on top of that. So that's not too bad, fits pretty well. But these are all, particularly the last two, have been very small boards, and I think doing this first, this one knob fuzz, which is a great effect by the way, I think it kind of scared me a little bit at doing anything that was too large. That's why I've gone for the buffer and this 7-minute fuzz. And if you're doing a small build like a 7-minute fuzz and you've got a bit of experience, or a boost or something that's quite small, you should think about doing it in a 1590A, because as you can see, it's not, it's not terribly hard. You should be able to get it in without too much trouble. So just keep that in the back of your mind when you're building, when you've tested your effect. If it's a small effect, just ask yourself, would it be that difficult to fit it into a 1590A? So then we move on to some of the more complicated pedals. This one was actually probably next. I actually thought I had a couple more in between those two. They might be in my stash in the cupboard, but doesn't matter. We'll just progress on anyway. So this is a germanium booster with the open style jacks again. Again, it's not a huge problem. This one's getting a bit close. I've made them close deliberately because I knew the board was quite large. And as you can see, you might be able to see, that tip is very close to that shield. And I'm actually pretty sure I bent that inwards because it was actually touching it. So you have that problem when you use these open style jacks, because they do take up a fair bit of room. But you can get away with it, like I'm showing you. There's effects that you can get away with it with, and particularly small ones. This one's pushing it, I'd say, with this Rangemaster, but it did fit. And you can also see that this DC jack was causing me issues because it's just taking up far too much room. The pots on this one are 9mm pots. There's no way you could fit 16mm pots, but I tell you, it would be probably pretty tough. I'd just go, if you've got more than one knob, you should go for a layout that's got that either has 9mm pots mounted on it, or you can just wire up 9mm pots, I guess. But just use, no matter what you do, just use 9mm pots. If you've got more than one knob, you definitely want to go for 9mm pots, because you're just going to cause yourself problems. So yeah, so that's that one. Fit pretty easy. I'll talk about components as well, and sizing, and some things to think about, because as you can see with that one, the cap's sticking up and I've had to push it down a bit. And I've got a germanium transistor, which can be notoriously big. That's an AC transistor, but that actually fits quite well. So we'll talk about that a bit later on. But that's another example of open style jacks. Pretty large board, and problems with the DC jack there as well. So then I went and did a Rangemaster with the low profile jacks, which are these black ones that I keep talking about. And it fit easier, but you can still see that there's a bit of a squish going on here. It's actually pushing the DC jack a bit to actually fit it in. I could have probably got around that if I had made it a bit tighter. There's room down the bottom. There's room just above the 3-pole double throw as well. So could have saved a bit of room if I had done that, and then it wouldn't have been such a tight squeeze. This is what I'm saying about the germanium booster, the Tone Master PCB. It's not specifically made for a 1598, but you can get it to fit, right? It's a bit of a tight squeeze, but you can get it to fit. So, yeah, and when I was saying before about special hardware and the low-profile jacks, that's what I was talking about. I'll show you an example of one of those a bit later on outside of the enclosure. But, yeah, they're the low-profile jacks. And there's also a DC jack that's more suited for this purpose as well. But I don't have any, but I'll explain that later as well. So that's a Rangemaster, and as you can see, it's a bit of a tight squeeze. And then there's this one, which is the Face Master, and I've said in my other in the build report for this board that I'm quite proud of my PCB designing skills with this one, because obviously a fuzz face has a lot more circuitry than a Rangemaster, and this also has an extra knob as well. But I managed to fit it in quite, I reckon I'd say with room to spare, because I deliberately made this board to fit inside a 1598. The Rangemaster, when I designed it, I didn't. This one I specifically had. The aim was to get inside a 1598 and not require low profile jacks, and as you can see, they fit there perfectly as well. So yeah, it's all you can see I've laid kind of, dare I say, meticulously laid this out so that it fits properly. You can see the DC jacks going through the middle there. You got the germanium transistors either side of that. So I've put a lot of thought and time into actually designing that board so that it will fit in quite well. So then you've got the SMD boost, and as you can see, the board's so damn small. SMD is a good choice for 1598s for obvious reasons. The components are just so small. So if you are into SMD soldering, then you're gonna have a good. You're probably going to want to look at 1598s, because you should be able to fit your circuits inside a 1598. You don't need those low profile jacks, as you can see, for this SMD boost. As I said, I only use those because I didn't have any open style jacks, which is the same for the next two that I'm going to show you as well. So yeah, pretty easy fit, that one. You could do that one with your eyes closed. It's just so there's just so much room in there. And then you got the 10-minute dirt and boost, and that's got a switch and a pot mounted 9mm pot, and it fits pretty damn easily. Again, you don't need the low profile jacks. Just watch out for that DC jack up the top. For all of these builds, if you're using the standard size DC jack, it's not the best choice for 1598s. You can do it and get away with it. I've done all these builds with these jacks and managed to pull it off, but it does create a bit of a squeeze, so you just got to be careful when you use them and you're drilling this top area, that you allow enough room for that DC jack, because I can tell you, when you drill it out, you just do not think about how it's going to affect the board that's right next to it. Once you start pushing it in and it doesn't fit, you go, oh god, I should have moved it up a bit or down a bit or whatever. So just take that into account when you're drilling the enclosure. So again, that's another easy one. Yeah, there's not really much too tricky about that. And then the last one is the M drive, and I made the Ember drive, and I made the PCB. I put the PCB far too close to the DC jack. Still fit okay. Luckily I made that DC jack high enough so it cleared the board across the top of the board, but there was just no need to do it because I've just got so much room down the bottom there. So again, that's what I was saying before about keep that in mind when you drill your DC jacks. That what you're going to be putting next to it as far as the board and the pots go. It's probably a good idea actually to drill that DC jack first, put the jack through, and then you'll be able to assess where you're going to put the board and the pots. So again, that's another easy one. Tons of room in that. You don't need these special low profile jacks. You can use open jacks. I think my son's at the study door.